Hello and welcome. Today is Friday, the 28th day of July, 2017. My name is Derek and welcome as let's take a look at Bitcoin and some alternate cryptocurrencies. The ebook of basically my entire playbook, what I am holding, what I'm trying to buy, where I'm trying to buy it, where I'm looking to sell. Everything will be available tomorrow. Now, I have to go in town for a few hours tomorrow, so the time delay will probably make it available sometime in around 24 hours. So Saturday evening, it will become available. Okay, then, so let's take a look at this chart, which is showing Bitcoin is king right now. We can see within this sideways movement, we have this little bit of a down flip. That's a failed breakdown. And I've talked about that already. Oftentimes a failed breakdown can do two things. One, create neutrality, which it does not look like is the case, although still in the range, or a fast move. And the area has to go at least to qualify to me as a fast move is, in this case, previous resistance being a normal amount away. But basically, you're looking for a big, decent move from the 18 average. And this was the case within this particular market. Now, since the high, which is a matching hit of a previous level after a good correction, whenever that situation takes place, I usually expect resistance. And that was the case. Comes down to 2,400, pretty much the exact number I originally pointed out to be an area where it could and did find support. And now it is leaving this newly rising 18 average, newly rising after it was short period or short timed in a declining facet, and even only intermediate time in a neutrality or a neutral fashion. So the bullish signs are in place. It is leaving this band again, coming up to this point, and when I see a situation, before it was at that spot of going back to previous high, when you have what you expected to do bullishly, and that is to have a fair and normal correction, either through time or price. This one was through price. Then you expect, when you come back to it, and it's not far away now, it's not there yet, but not far, you expect it's either going to take it out and then keep on going, thus making this level support area you'd be looking at, or you expect a much nicer correction or higher or lower sideways, meaning you come up to here and maybe this type of movement you get for 3 or 4 periods where it ranges in here, then breaks higher, or you make a higher low, as in you come up here and then instead you might find a higher low at around maybe 26 change. And then, of course, when you break out from there, you're totally expecting to break that level and thus have good green candles towards the upside. Let's switch the time frame now. And we're looking at this within a 4-hour time frame. And within, we can see earlier within this rally, it had a little bit of support. And when it left it, it had a tremendous move. It did its normal corrector situation. You can, again, make a case of a possible failed breakdown. Either way, however, since the leaving of the band, what do we see? Up move, up, up, up. And it is now consolidated with one red down period, one sideways time, and then further correction higher. This is a very strong situation, especially if it's able to have this kind of move, have a correction without even being anywhere near the 18 average of highs, which explains that it didn't need that much of a price correction. In this case, only going from 28 low change to 27 low change, or $100. That's a small correction in this game. or it didn't need that much time, only what's now 3 periods going sideways. And this tells me that the buyers are almost anxious or the sellers are in a very limited situation. And it brings a potential for much higher prices, especially if in the near term, which would be defined as the next 12 hours, if it's 16 hours, if it's breaking out past this point in the high 28s, then it's got huge potential to have some good gains. But like I was saying, in the long term, you could have situations of it going sideways or making a significant higher low from this period in here. Now presenting the 1 hour time frame, which I thought was, and I still think, is and was a great time frame to use to signify the correction of this downturn. As I was liking how it played out amongst here, finding support a couple times with this 18 average of highs. And after this correction of extended period, or not extended, but a decent amount of correcting through time, that leaving this 18 average is where it had its great move higher. Just a little bit, but a decent enough of a correction to the 18 of highs. Another great move leaving it. And now what has occurred is 7 or 8 periods of correcting within a rising 18 average band, supporting the lows, resisting the highs. Well, now for 2 periods, what's been occurring is the previous period, it broke out above it. It has now came back down to that area, which of course is this resistance in here. This period is consolidating its move through a time horizon, thus in transition or in the current phase of trying to leave this band. And this has been a very good indicator that if you start to see price action in here, not only it would look like a good time to think, oh man, just like it was in here, and then again in here, that you could have what happened before, a move like that, a move like that, and then in this case a move up maybe to 29.60, and then it corrects through time. But the long-term time frame says once we go and break these key levels, we're now at all-time new highs, something we haven't been talking about for many weeks now. All right, so that will be the Bitcoin. Let's take a look at the altcoins, which haven't been doing that well. Let's start off with Litecoin, and this turned bearish today. As how I look at technical analysis, I don't use many indicators, but the 18 average is most certainly one of them, and in this case, this is a situation that for a reversal of trend, what I'm looking for is step 1, band flattening out. Step 2, establishing, in this case on the downside, support. Step 3, coming back to the band. Here's a situation where it corrected not through price, but through time. And final step is the break of this level, and we can see that this has just happened. So now I would gauge this as bear camp. I would also notice very quickly that this area, which also was big support in here, is the most logical spot in which you would encounter levels of resistance. And it also, to me, makes the probability such to be very good, because I would expect at least one leg lower. And whether that leg has a move first that would most likely resist within this area, also resist within this 18 average, and then of course have its move. And I'm just quickly looking now that this is the area, and I think 11 is what I've written in my book, but that is the what I'd be looking at. Now the alternate, of course, here is I talk about failed move, fast move. That could be the case, I don't know, but I can tell you this. This is a major support level. It's also indicated within this analysis of going bearish. I'm sure many other technical indicators are pointing bearish signals because, well, just they do. And if it has any type of quick move in this type of area, because it's already broken major support, and it regains back to where it came from before in its previous trading range, which is within this rectangular move, then you would be looking for failed move, fast move, and you would expect to go at least to this high as where your fast move target would go. That's the basic two situations that I would look at when I see a setup sort of like this within the Litecoin. We can see with ETC, Ethereum Classic, moving into bear market territory today as well, as it was in this very long sideways correctionary move, and it's normally band flat now at established level, but in this case it's a very clear established sideways move with original support being in the area of here. It then deepened, which is what's important for the established areas in this level, so twice hit. So during this phase of just a few days, it was very clear what the important levels are. The 18 average, which was rising this entire time, went sideways. It had its small move lower, indicating it wanted to go bullish. Now notice in here you have this big green up candle. It consolidated well for a few days, but this red candle wasn't a nice looking sign, and its price correction was not that of a correction. It was continuation to the downside. Thus, this is a move saying, hey, I'm ready to get going. I'm ready to break resistance and have this thing going. And no, it doesn't happen. So we're looking at, again, a failed move and a fast move. And quite frankly, a fast move is below this point, and this amount of decline isn't fast, or it's got more to go in my book to be that of a fast move. And of course, just like I was stating with Litecoin, with Litecoin, that you can still get the failed move, fast move, and the situation's always the same, to have a noticeable break, relatively brief in here, which is usually 1, 2, 3, 4 or so periods, maybe 5. Then you move back within where you were in this area in here, and then you have continuation, and just like any other fast move, you'd expect to go to previous high. And let's move on to the next one. And we're looking at Dash in this example. It has not turned bearish. For in this situation here, what's the established support? And the answer to that is 60. You have this area here, and it's been going sideways ever since. Another hit here, pierce above so far, so that's enough in itself to even strengthen how big of a level this is. So seeing decline below here is what I would need to put this into a bear camp. Rather, it is neutral to what its current trend is. Now, what's its current trend? Its current trend is in correctionary mode of the big spring and winter rally that is in this like happy face cup formation. So it's a correcting within such. So the trying to attempt to make this thing higher, where within its correctionary mode right now, it is on an upper floor to where the correction floors are. This is like an upper floor. Then you have a floor in here, which would be from 70 to about 50 area. And then you'd have a basement down to about 36. And of course, if you break down below here, well, we're probably looking towards this little area here, 42 to 50 as expected support. And this down move also strengthens its neutrality that it's had a lot of during the spring and even into summer correctionary sideways move. Now let's move on to the daily chart for ZEC Zcash. And what time frame would this market have turned bearish? The answer is this day, because what I need to see on the reversal, of course, after the band flattening is establish the level of support, come back to the band, break support. We can see in here, it barely broke it, but it continued its support. And then, of course, breaking in here was indication of a bear market. It's been going down ever since. This correctionary move was close to getting to the 18 average, but not quite, but it didn't fall down, meaning it made a higher low. However, it did have its 18 average band correct, retest previous low, and it was correcting in the band, and notice it is broken down. So this is stating that now we're having another leg lower, the second leg lower in the bear market, as leg lower number 1 was this, and now we are at number 2. Is this going to be it for it? Well, same thing as the other ones. If it bottoms roughly around now, only stays within here for a few periods, enters back within this previous trading range and has momentum higher, you're looking at a fast move. And a fast move you would expect to be about a 61.8% correction in this area here, if that's the case. But right now we are looking at further decline, and you would have to think a 61.8% move from here to here, and I will now calculate that. And I'm looking at, well, 61.8% on the way down translates to 38.2% on the way up, and that's 487. So that would work out to this previous low in here as the area I think that its downward potential would be towards. Obviously, this level of previous support at the 75-ish handle would be a level you'd be looking for as resistance at this point. Notice the 785. This is right in here. Fibonacci doing what it does. When this leg lower, it was where the bottom was. Now, if you bought at this level, what this meant was the only way it became profitable for you is if you were able to sell at around 95 or lower. Meaning, if you did, congratulations, you got a profit. But if you put a sell order for, say, 99.9, well, it didn't hit, and now you're in the red or the losses. So that's really part of the risk reward and yes or no on the dice kind of deal when you're playing the game. But within this, you're trying to make the odds or the probability of the dice or the roulette wheel to actually be in your favor. And that's why it was stuff like, okay, I'm going to be looking to buy, say, down at the bottom end at 49. Where do I want to sell? Well, it looks like 75 would be where I'd want to sell kind of deal. All right, let's move on and show a couple other ones. Let's look at Ripple on its daily chart next. And I guess we can count this as a bear market. I don't know when, if you count it in here. I mean, this is just wild because what I'm looking for on a reversal of trend after this up move is 1, band flatten out. I guess it's here. Number 2, establishing support, which is way down here. Come back to the band. It did that for a while. Yeah, it did. It retested support with a lower high. Again, it retested support, and again with a lower high. And today's action is breaking down below support. So if it wasn't bearish before, it definitely is today now. And if you're going to have a decline, you would have to think it's going to be pretty deep, especially with something as volatile as this. I would be surprised if all you get is something like this, if that's all it is, which would be really around 45. I would be surprised if it doesn't go lower than that. I would think, as we look at this previous band of resistance in here, this previous band as well, and then we bring up some Fibonacci, and it has a wild difference on the high and the low. Let's bring it up. And it really paints an interesting story, and sometimes you have to try to understand these numbers and how they're going to play out, because we're looking at 482 to 24,000 as a difference, which is pretty much 50x from high to low. So that's relatively extreme. which is why this chart looks really weird, is because they do not do well with big time log scale and necessity needs, and 50x being one of them. So the first correction I'm looking at is the biggest number, and that's the 95.55, the 76.4. That represents a 23.6% down move. So what occurred was a move that went below 7,000, which was above the 5,400 number here. But when we look at the 95, which is just roughly around here, we can see it's an area where it settled in as support during the months of June. So now the next level, which is a 38.2% down correction. On this chart, it looks like it's a 61.8, but again, it's a really poor scaling within. But the number is 5,400, which is like we're right there, or we're pretty much there. Here's where you have to use logic. One, this is a very volatile code, as we can obviously tell. Two, 5,400 is barely a move breaking on this support handle. Three, markets usually go back to where they come from, which of course is in this rectangular area here, which would coincide with what you would expect a decent move when it thus leaves the declining 18 average of lows, as it is doing now and such. And next, just like before, we can see the 76.4 was 95, yet it fell an additional 20-30% farther lower. We might have to think the same might be true again, where it's going to pierce well below the 54, probably towards the area of between 2,500 and about 4,000, probably 3,800 even. And then in time settle and show that 53.99 is a key area. And if there's even more further decline from that period on, then 2,100 would turn out to be a big level, which is right in here as this previous low. All right, one final chart. And that'll be NEM or XEM. I mean, why do they call it NEM? Just call it XEM, I guess. Or why is the code XEM and not NEM? I mean, to me, that's just like a nuance that I think. I mean, that's just weird. It's almost like how I would say to a European who says tomato, do you say potato? Huh? Just saying. Anyway, this chart has showing a sign of wanting to revert trend. Now, as far as established resistance is concerned, you know, I'm going to make a case in here, but even for what it's worth, you could even state towards a 70 handle. But we're seeing a newly rising 18 average, and thus its first attempt, a solid attempt rather, to revert the trend. This attempt didn't work. This attempt obviously didn't as well. And this one has at least managed to start an uptrend, albeit for a short period of time. It's moved, of course, back to within. But if you see situations of this not holding well, price action going a bit in here, then you can almost make a case of this being a failed attempt or failed breakout. And of course, failed moves oftentimes comes fast move. And generally, every single code was going down today. As when I wake up in the morning and I log on to my trading site and I see everything, all the main codes and even some other non-main ones, but mainly the Litecoins, the Dash, the Ethereum, so on and so forth, get buy order after buy order after buy order. Well, that tells me that the entire general market was obviously having a mass sell-off, and basically every single alternate coin is going down. Now, when I'm using this strategy, I'm going to see the opposites times several times as well, where when you've seen in here, for example, this is where you're getting sell orders. You might wake up and see, oh my goodness, I have 25 different codes that are giving me sell orders. And you notice your Bitcoin portfolio balance is much higher than it was the previous day. as it would be lower, and for my case, this morning. And then that's just part of how the market works. And yeah, so anyway, thank you for tuning in, and have yourself a great weekend. Bye-bye.